Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Ramirez. What I have for you today is an informative speech about education and its role in communication. What I'm going to go ahead and start off by doing is a quick pan of my audience. After I get that completed for you, I'll start the informative speech and go ahead and get going. Take a video of my audience real quick just to verify. 5 adults. I'll flip this screen back, go ahead and get back to the speech. So like I mentioned, education and its role on communication. And so what that means is essentially better education, better performance, and their effectiveness to communicate between manager, supervisor, or employee to employee. Now, according to HuffingtonPost.com, on September 6th, 2013, did you know that on the greatest country on earth, there are 32 million of its citizens who can't even read? Making our country great starts with educating our youth, especially if 19% of high school graduates don't understand the letters on their job applications. So could you imagine walking into a job interview, handing an application, or even terms for employment, but being at the disadvantage where you can't either read or B, communicate effectively enough during the interview process where you don't get the job or you don't perform well in the workplace. So to limit negative aspects on business communication, we should start at the root of development. There are a couple things that we can do. We can eliminate a couple barriers to education on communication in the global economy. I know this is more of an informative speech. It's supposed to inform you rather than tell you what to do. But it's eliminating these barriers is what's going to improve the communication in the workplace, in school, and everywhere else. One barrier is that our literacy rate hasn't changed in about 10 years. Again, stated by HuffingtonPost.com, September 3rd, 2013, 14% of adults demonstrated below basic literary level and 29% displayed a below basic reading level. So students who are behind in the classroom tend to be behind communicating professionally. These challenges can hurt them later on down the road. It's that bridge, or essentially, like I mentioned, the bridge that a person has to cross in between just being a regular employee or being a manager, a supervisor, or even upper management, executives, or even the head of the company, CEO. These are all attributes that someone has to have. They have to be an effective communicator in the workplace. And if they didn't have a stable foundation when they were younger, it's really hard to attain that knowledge, being set back so far from the beginning. It's like I mentioned, if we can't set our students up for success, then later on down the road, that's just a lot tougher for them. Now, as we take a look at a couple other development stages, the Department of Education states that by the end of 4th grade, African American, Hispanic, and low-income students are already 2 years behind in grade level. By the time they reach the 12th grade, they are 4 levels behind. So you can think about this, setting up our kids for a great future. We can't always do that if we don't implement that from the get-go. So some of the barriers that education does have on the global sphere of us developing leaders, just us finding a better way to educate our youth, like I just keep emphasizing. John Q, CEO of Charter Schools USA, states that charter schools offer the opportunity to foster innovative working environments that allow teachers and students to interact in ways that prepare them for jobs and skills that will be relevant in the future. Basically, it's what it all comes back to, is just a stable foundation to be effective communicators. And there are, like I mentioned, barriers. Poverty is a huge one. Students who live in poverty typically aren't prepared for a business setting, a professional setting, because they've been drawn back so much in their childhood. 40% of children living in poverty aren't prepared for primary schooling. Once again, Huffington Post, September 13, 2013, states that economic security, access to health care, and the ability to actively participate in civic life all depend on an individual's ability to read. Like I mentioned, students who are left behind in the classroom are farther behind in the professional workplace. They lack the ability to have proper soft skills, email etiquette, and interpersonal skills it takes to be an effective communicator and successful in the workplace. So hopefully I could have informed you enough about the topics of education and barriers to communication. What I'll do again is just give a quick pan of my audience, and then after that, I'll be all done. I'm gonna go ahead and switch the camera, brighten it back over. The audience one more time for you guys.